We often think about our health in terms of diet, exercise, and maybe our family history. But what if I told you there's a much deeper story? A story that connects our biology to the very fabric of the societies we live in. That's what we're digging into today.
So let's just start with a pretty wild thought. What if your risk for major illnesses down the road, we're talking heart disease, diabetes, was pretty much set in motion before you even took your first breath? It's a huge idea, right? And it completely changes the way we have to think about health. To even begin to understand how that's possible, we have to look at this amazing concept in biology that traces the roots of adult disease all the way back to our very first moments of life. Okay, so this whole thing really kicked off with a scientist named David Barker. He noticed something that nobody else had really connected before. Babies born with a low birth weight were way more likely to develop heart disease when they grew up. This led to what's now called Barker's hypothesis, or DOHAD. The core idea is that the environment inside the womb can literally biologically program a person's health for the rest of their life. So how in the world does that programming actually happen? Well, the answer is a super cool field called epigenetics. Now, we're not talking about changing your actual DNA. Your genes are your genes. Instead, things like what a mother eats during pregnancy can cause these tiny epigenetic changes. Think of them like little sticky notes being placed on your DNA that tell certain genes to either switch on or switch off. And those little notes can stay there for a lifetime, basically setting the stage for good health or for disease later on.
But here's the thing. This whole biological process, it doesn't just happen in a bubble. To really get what's going on, we have to zoom out from the level of our genes and look at the much, much bigger social forces that are shaping our world.
And that leads us to the real question here. If this early developmental stage is so incredibly important, why are some babies starting out with the deck stacked against them? Why are they more likely to be programmed for a higher risk of disease? Well, the answer isn't just about biology anymore.
When you look at what causes low birth weight, you find it's deeply, deeply connected to social and economic conditions. We're talking about things like poverty, a mother's own health and stress levels, or simply whether she can get good, nutritious food. This is so important. The biological risk is very often a direct reflection of a social disadvantage.
So we've got these powerful influences from early life, part biology, part society. But how do they actually play out over a whole lifetime? Well, scientists have come up with a few different models that help us understand these different journeys. Let's quickly walk through 4 of these main models. They're basically different ways to picture how health advantages and disadvantages can add up over time. And it's not like you only get one. A lot of times these are all happening at once. First, you've got the critical period model. This one's pretty straightforward. Something happens during a really sensitive window of development, like in the womb, and that event has a permanent, lifelong effect. The die is kind of cast, Okay, the next model adds a little twist. It also starts with that critical period, but it says, hey, what happens later in life still matters a lot. Later experiences can either make that early effect even worse, or, and this is key, they can actually help make it better. So there's some hope there. The third model is all about accumulation. Just imagine a scale. And over a person's life, little weights, representing risks like a stressful job or living in a polluted area, get added to that scale, one by one. Eventually, the total weight of all those risks is what tips the scale toward poor health. And finally, there's the chain of risk model. This one is like a domino effect. One disadvantage knocks over the next one. So maybe a tough start in school leads to a lower paying job, which means you can only afford to live in a neighborhood with fewer healthy resources. It's a chain reaction that builds a pathway toward poor health. So you can start to see how these different paths can shape a person's entire health story. And once you understand that, it forces us to face a really important idea. We hear the term health inequality all the time, but there's another word that's way more powerful and way more accurate. Okay, so what is the big deal here? Inequality versus inequity. An inequality is just a difference. It's a fact you can measure. Group A has this outcome, Group B has another. But an inequity? Oh, that's something else entirely. An inequity is a difference that is systematic, that's created by how society works, and that is fundamentally unfair. It's not just a number on a chart. It's a moral issue. This quote from the public health expert Margaret Whitehead just nails it. Let's break down those words. Systematic means it's not random. There's a pattern. Socially produced means it's caused by how we've organized our world, not just by random chance or biology. And unfair means it goes against our basic sense of justice. So if these differences are unfair and are created by society, well, that's actually good news in a way, because it means we also have the power to fix them. So for this last part, let's look at how we can actually do that.
So the big question becomes, what do we do about it? If we know these problems are systematic, how do we systematically fix them? Well, thankfully, experts have laid out some pretty clear roadmaps for us to follow.
Margaret Whitehead, the same expert from before, gives us this powerful four-step approach. And you can see this is not about one simple fix. It's about a real strategy, getting everyone on board from all different sectors, really understanding the problem, putting resources where they're needed, and then creating detailed action plans. It's about being smart and intentional.
And the scale of what needs to be done, it's huge. Just look at these recommendations from the World Health Organization. This isn't just about building more hospitals. It's about giving kids a fair start in life, creating healthy neighborhoods, ensuring people have decent jobs, providing social safety nets, and maybe most importantly, making health equity a goal in every single government policy.
So, we'll end by bringing it all back home. After everything we've talked about, from our very first cells to the societies we build, the really big question for all of us is this: what are those invisible forces shaping health right there in your community? And what can we all do to make it a little bit more fair for everyone?